So, welcome to the Tech Summit online conference. I have Simon here from Simwood. So, we're going to be chatting about his potato chapter 3. Simon, great to see you. You're looking well. I'm really happy
Thank
about
you, Alan.
that. And please provide an introduction to what you were talking about in your article about chapter 3 of the potato.
Okay, you're straight in the deep end then.
Yes.
Well, really, it was something of an epiphany. So, despite my youthful good looks and exuberance, as a company, we're 30 years old
Yes,
this
I
year,
know.
and when you've been about that length of time, you can divide your history into distinct chapters.
Yeah.
And I had a realization that we'd had two chapters. We're still arguably in the second,
Yeah.
but I could see the third. And wrote a blog post, which is
Yeah.
the one you're referencing. The first two chapters, the very first one where the company started was this notion that this internet thing and these mobile phone things are probably going to catch on and they're probably going to come together.
Yep.
So we built, or I built, because it was me in a bedroom back in those days.
That's it.
Yes, ESMS, which
Yep.
was the world's first global gateway between the internet and mobile phones,
Exactly.
competing with a little company called Research in Motion.
Exactly.
And I used to meekly say that they'd done quite well, but I'm feeling a bit more confident nowadays. But chapter two was obviously VoIP and the
Yes.
convergence of voice, the internet, or voice over internet
Yeah.
specifically, and arguably that's been a chapter that we've been in far longer than anybody expected. I mean,
Yes.
frankly, I can remember certain luminaries who will remain nameless in our industry saying back at the start of that journey, "Why the hell are you going into voice? Voice is dead. There's no business in voice." Well, there is. There has
Exactly.
been. There still will be for some time. Or
As long as humans, we need to talk. Full stop.
yeah, yeah. Although referencing our previous chat, I draw a distinction nowadays between voice and telephony, because I think
Yes.
telephony is what we mean by voice when we talk
Yes.
about the monetization of it. But I think telephony is inherently time limited,
Yes.
and far too few people appreciate that
Oh,
this
yes.
time. But they will in due course.
Yes.
But a couple of years ago, in fact, more than a couple of years ago, it was probably 3 years ago or so, we started flirting with AI, and we
Hmm.
started flirting with AI as part of what you've referenced there as our potato initiative.
Yeah.
And for those that haven't heard me talk about carbohydrates before, our potato initiative was resulted from a blog post written when I was hungry, which is why it's full of food metaphors.
Yeah.
After a disagreement with my other half as to whether soup was actually constituted lunch or not. Um, and the potato was a metaphor for our network, globally distributed core, skewers going into it being different
Yeah.
transports like
Yeah.
SIP, like Zoom, like Teams, and then lovely foil around it, which was the service layers. The
Yeah.
idea being that through an API, you could consume any of our services anywhere and have an any-to-any type service, despite our history at that point as being a predominantly voice based
Yeah.
infrastructure based carrier. Um, we started flirting with AI, and it was very much experimentation. It was very much let's create some more service wraps,
Yeah.
transcription, sentiment analysis,
Yeah.
all of that kind of guff. That led us. Sorry, I don't know if guff is a sales approved term. All that amazing stuff. Um, that sort of led us down the road to conversational AI,
Yeah.
and we put out our first voice agent capability back. I think it was April 2025 or something.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we were very clear then that, look, we haven't reinvented the wheel here. We're consuming third-party APIs. This is a hugely complicated space. What
Yeah.
we're doing is adding the value where we can.
Yeah.
And at that time, the value was in the orchestration, making it actually consumable through an
Yes.
API for a normal person that wasn't a space cadet.
Exactly.
Um, and the sort of the the efficacy of it and the telephony aspect of it,
Yeah.
because a lot of the people in that space were coming at it from a Gen Z perspective. They lived in a web browser. They didn't
Yeah.
know what a phone was. Rotary dial was something satanic, and Bakelite is something off Superman. Both of which I know you'll be intimately familiar with. But
Exactly.
that was the beginning of a journey, really.
Yes.
And one thing I think, I'm pretty humble, believe it or not. But one thing I do think we're good at as a company is learning.
Yeah.
So we've been on a huge journey of learning all the bits that we didn't know.
Yeah.
All this complicated stuff that clever people created and we consumed as APIs.
Exactly.
And that led to something of a realization, which is going to sound less humble, that most of it's crap.
Yes.
There's a lot of companies out there with, well, in the case of 11 Labs, an $11 billion valuation for some stuff that's
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
some stuff that's not.
Correct.
And we've come to appreciate that where we thought we could add value being this big is actually this big,
Hmm.
and the future is in us doing so. And it's and the pretext for the blog that you reference was me writing a business plan around that,
Yes.
which, yes, it's just a business plan. It's something, most people do frequently. But for me, I viewed it as a chapter. I
Yes.
viewed it as it's something I've done twice before.
Yep.
I'm doing it for the third time in the history of the business. And as I do so, there are a huge amount of parallels.
Yes.
Namely, you've got modern technology that everybody's making, lots of fuss about, that's overly complicated, that could be simpler, that if you own the infrastructure, you can improve the economics. If you improve the
Exactly.
economics, you can improve the experience. And
Exactly.
we've been here twice before.
Yes.
Um, and really that all came together in my head is that this is just chapter 3. This is
Yes.
us. This is us again.
Yeah.
So we're not in any way, shape, or form abandoning, the carrier space. That
Oh,
that
no, no,
pays the
no.
bills. That keeps the lights on. We're still
That's it.
growing,
Yes.
uniquely in that space by virtue of what we do differently.
Yes.
But it was a realization that going forwards, our focus is increasingly going to be on this area.
Yes.
And increasingly, we need to own more of the solution. And that goes right as far as, having GPUs on there where we can
Yes.
really value, we can
Yeah.
drive the economics. And like I say, they say history doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. You can see that, the economics around running GPUs is very similar to the economics around running TDM gear back,
Yes. Back in
10,
the
10,
day.
15 or
Exactly.
more, or more years ago, where you think, Christ, how do I pay for that box that sits in a corner? But actually, if you break it down a few million times, you can over a
Exactly.
period of time if you're
That's
careful,
it.
if you know what you're doing. Very different to where the world is today, which is, hey, we're worth 11 billion. Give us a few hundred million that will spunk on some equipment, and who knows when it will be paid for. Which is far more reminiscent of the dot-com boom, which sadly I
Exactly.
was also intimately familiar.
Yes, I remember. Yes.
Um,
We won't talk about that website.
so yeah, that's where
That's
we are
it.
really. That's our new focus. We released version 2 of our conversational AI a few weeks ago, maybe getting on
Hmm.
for a month ago.
All right.
That is a few steps along the journey, focusing on
Yes.
optimizations. Those optimizations being both latency and critical things like that, but also the commercials.
Yes.
Where in certain areas, by doing things ourselves or doing things right, we've cut the cost of a given part of the pipeline by a tenth.
Yes.
Did I
Yeah.
say by a
Yeah.
tenth?
To a
By
tenth. Yeah.
90%. By ninety
Yeah.
percent, I mean
Yeah.
to a tenth, and you replicate that across the whole stack.
Yeah.
And actually, and this is where the business plan came from. Actually, there's an opportunity for us to do what we've done twice before, and effectively be the VAPI for carriers.
Yes.
Because there is nobody in that space at the moment. All of these guys that are out there raising, forgive the pun, telephone number fundraisers,
Yeah.
they want the customers themselves.
Yes.
their VC funding kind of requires the margins that come from having the customers themselves.
Exactly.
Their pricing requires customers that need AI today at any cost.
Yes.
There is no place in their model or their economics for the people that have actually got the customers,
Yes.
which is the telcos of the world.
Yes. Exactly.
Telcos of the world who need a new product, who need, sustainable income themselves, who can add value to the end user enterprise, who already understand the end user enterprise and who are in the end user enterprise,
Exactly.
but just need something reliable to deliver
Exactly.
to them.
Yep. It
Um,
does need an
and
engineering team on site.
Yeah, and there is a sort of side story there that in this furore of overfunded startups and overzealous enterprises, there's been lots of fingers burnt.
Yes.
We hear some horrific stories from enterprise where they've spent a fortune on putting AI in the call center, going too far, too deep, too quickly with the wrong party, and they're getting like 1% resolution by AI, and are very, very cautious.
Yes.
So whoever picks up this, or the telcos of the world picking up this mantle next, have just like after the dot-com boom, have some soothing to do
Yes.
before the real opportunity comes along. And so it's our place, I believe, to deliver that solution,
Mhm.
but be on that journey with them, and
Yes.
that's what we're making moves towards.
Yep. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's taking a very pragmatic approach that is, I would say, at the moment, specific to the customers. So it's applying whether it's an agent that's answering calls, that's filtering. I mean, because the problem we have here in the US is just ridiculous levels of robocalling. I'm so angry. I'm so angry
No,
at the
do you not
time.
have that new thing on the iPhone? It's been a game changer for me, where you get the transcription.
Yeah, I don't have the iPhone.
Ah, you're one of those
Yeah, and my
green dot
service,
people, eh?
yeah, I have a cheap sort of Mint Mobile plan. So yeah, I don't get
I,
any of
I I don't know many poor people, so yeah, maybe
Yeah, it helps me. You need to walk, basically a few steps in the poor people's shoes to understand the appalling state of the PSTN. I mean,
yeah,
because when you say, I mean, you're making a very valid point around telephony, and its time is limited. I think here in North America, because of the god awful state of robocalling and the lack of action, yeah, we're going to see stuff shift. But I would say, because North America is an important part of your business, your solutions, I think, will find a lot of customers, whether it's serving through a telco or one of the channels that enterprises buy from that are telco or telecoms related, because that's sort of where Vida cells is working with UCAS providers. So the UCAS providers have all these channel relationships, and it's just adding a simple agent that works as an SMB. So I run a gardening service or a tree service, and I've got all this crap, 6 or 7, robocalls coming in a day, plus all this other stuff that's happening, and you're just looking for somebody to filter that. So when I get home and I go through my messages, it's all, some of it's already been managed. So there's appointments in my calendar for the next day or later in the week, and some of it is just out of my hair. And that is a godsend for so many small businesses,
oh god, yeah, yeah.
that will
I think I've
pay not hundreds of dollars, but will happily pay, a few tens per day to basically have that to make their life
yeah,
easier.
yeah, yeah, and I've said exactly the same thing to our customers. Even a glorified voicemail or glorified IVR
Yes.
that is less intolerable, for customers is progress and is value
Yes.
for us. I probably told you the story of the guy that installed our televisions in our office in 2017.
Hmm.
And he saw VoxApp as it was then,
Yeah.
our the top app, and he wanted it there and then. And we didn't have a retail proposition then, so we couldn't
Yeah.
have it. We got talking to him. He had 3 mobile phone contracts, and this was a bloke that spent all day on a stepladder putting tellies up. So he had a phone for himself,
Yeah.
he had a phone for his wife, and he diverted his calls to his wife when he was up a ladder.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he had a phone for his wife to call him or something. And
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
mobile phone contracts at, I don't know, 30, 40
Yeah.
pound a month each. And he's like, wow, if I can have an app with the same number in two places at once, that would be amazing.
Yes.
And I thought, this is in 2017, when we're a decade ahead of that kind of problem in terms of what
Yes.
we're solving. It's no different when I went to a trade show in, I think that probably be about 2015. And by that stage, I was bored of WebRTC 5 years before. I was so fed up of hearing about it.
Yeah.
Yet there's a bloke there with a stand at this trade show, and he's got 2 cameras on it. And I'm like, what's this all about? He's like, well, have you got elderly parents? I'm like, yeah. He says, well, you can buy 2 of these cameras. You can give one to them and they plug it into their telly. And you can have one yourself and you plug it into your telly and you can talk to each other. And I'm like, Christ sake, it's 2015. Why? Why? But the market always lags, whereas
Correct.
technologists, we are. And when you get excited about flashing lights and technology, you tend to jump to what's the maximum problem this could solve. And sure, when we're designing agents and creating things, we're thinking way ahead in terms of call centers, enterprises,
Exactly.
agents
Yes.
supervising enterprise, agents supervising agents, and all of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
type of thing. But actually, for 20 quid a month, for a builder to have his phone answered and
Yes.
appointments booked and to maybe give out some quote information, or
Yes.
a florist to give opening hours and take, there's
That's it.
huge opportunity there.
Exactly.
So we've tried to build what we're building in a way that not only are we controlling the infrastructure and controlling the ground floor the way we always have with everything, but that is super accessible.
Exactly.
So at the carrier services level, people that do control the infrastructure can build an agent in like 30 seconds. They just create a prompt. It can register against their own platform. They can sell it as their own agent on their own UCaaS platform.
That's it.
Away they go. But equally, people that are reselling our UCaaS, they don't even have to create a prompt. They just describe what the industry is and what they're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
We'll go away and do it, and do it for them. And I think that's really important. And there's huge opportunity for people there. Like I say, £20, $20 a month times however many SMEs there are in your given country, with a product that will actually scale globally,
Exactly.
is no small opportunity.
Exactly. I mean, you
And the
can just
problems are
point
there.
the service to the company's website and say that's the business, and
Well,
then
that's
it knows the
that's
pricing, it knows the
yeah,
hours, it's got all the core, and they've already invested basically
yeah.
thousands of dollars in doing that website, and you can use that in creating this agent.
Yeah. Well, 2 things we did in the version 2 conversational AI.
Hmm.
The first was call control. So you can give an agent a restricted list of extensions on
Yeah,
the UCaaS platform it registers to,
yeah,
and a plain English description of what they're for.
yeah,
So this is for if a customer calls up with an accounts query. This is for
yep,
if a customer wants to buy something. Well, in one step there, you've replaced an IVR. Somebody just phones up and has a chat.
yeah,
But they can't phone up and say, "Can I speak to Simon? Because I want to sell him something that he's not interested in." Because that's restricted on the
exactly.
wet list. But the big thing was, and this was one of the things that we realised we could do so much better than frankly everybody out there, is what's called RAG.
Yes,
You've probably heard of
yeah,
RAG
yeah,
in
oh yeah, yeah,
context of agent. So essentially, the search engine for the agent, because there's a limited amount of information you can give it in a prompt when you
yes,
answer the call. So the RAG enables you to take a website, take a process manual, take a book in some cases, or
yeah,
several,
yeah, yeah,
and extract the relevant stuff to include in the prompt. And what we
exactly.
realized is that the solutions out there, A, weren't indexing documents properly,
Yeah,
but B, where they were including so little in the prompt as to be completely useless.
yeah,
So we've given there's no off-the-shelf RAG
nope,
solution out there. We've built that from the ground up, such that
Yeah.
RAG is now used in every interaction with the AI. It's so cheap because it's on net predominantly,
Exactly.
that you can include big resources for every agent. And we've taken that a stage further in that we call it the Pete Farmer test, because you know Pete, but one of the things he does with our agents is basically ask them about his. We have a sales demo agent called Jay. One of the things he always asks Jay is about his latest blog post. He don't care about anybody else's blog post. He always wants to know about his latest blog post. And anything indexing at a point in time is
Yeah.
going to fail that test. So one of the things we've introduced in V2 is live web search, where the agent deems
Ah,
it appropriate. So you've
yeah.
not only got the RAG for the indexed
Yeah.
process manual
All the
website,
store
whatever, but
stuff.
you
Yeah.
can go away and do a live search against a restricted,
Yeah.
list of
Absolutely.
domains and get the current information. And if you
Interesting.
think of that in, like, say, an IVR type situation or an IVR replacement type situation, customer rings up, are you guys having an outage? Well, actually, the agent's going to say no, because the status page 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
everything was absolutely fine. But if
Yeah.
it can monitor Twitter or status page or whatever, and that percolates
Exactly.
across any
Oh yeah.
business, not just a technical business. And we're building additional tools now for additional
Cool.
things, so like multi-party media. So agents can whisper to humans, and humans can whisper to agents, and agents
Yeah.
can even supervise agents, and
Hmm. Yeah.
to build more of that bigger kind of enterprise solution. And one of the things I said to customers about 6 months ago is, look, we're going to take what looks like a pause with AI. And now, admittedly, in the meantime, we did all the WhatsApp integration, all that good stuff. We didn't
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really take a pause, but from an AI point of view, we did take a pause, but we took that pause to rebuild from the ground up. And my contention was, give us this time to rebuild from the ground up, because then we can move quicker, faster.
Yes.
And that's where we are now. And I've got
Cool.
so many ideas bouncing around about products and solutions that we want to build, that we can now, given the platform that we control, that we own, that we've built,
Yeah.
we can create some amazing customer facing stuff, as well as continuing behind the scenes just to replace those elements, because there's loads of stuff that's still off net,
Oh
where we're
yeah.
still consuming things from
Yeah.
bigger providers that do it very well. Ultimately, we can do it better, we can do it on net, and we can do it with more security and better AI.
Exactly. Privacy.
But that's a
Exactly.
that's not an overnight thing.
No.
It'd be
Yeah.
naive to pretend that
Exactly.
it is.
And we're
Um,
definitely in that stage where it's just get it into customers' hands, let them play with it. Because their environment, their situation is so unique. And some things work, some things are crap. And, I mean, talking to customer, people in this space, it's amazing the feedback they're gathering. And all that learning goes directly and quickly into their products in
oh
terms
yeah,
of, and really crafting, I mean, I really take to heart like the real time piece in like traffic, knowing the real-time traffic situation around where your business is, so that when somebody's calling, you can provide them with alerts. We had, like, as you know, here in the US, massive storm, blow through recently. And we've got another one this weekend blowing through. But just to be able to have that, so it's like talking to a real person,
yeah,
because they've got that real time information, so they can warn people and give appropriate information on those questions. But cool. I think I'm really excited to see and learn from the successes you're having as you put this into customers' hands over the coming years, because the diversity and how that impacts what works and what doesn't work. I remain shocked. It's amazing learning experience, but it's all about just getting it into customers' hands and seeing how they play with it.
yeah. And you hit the nail on the head there. I think when you suggested learning about the pain points, one of the early things we found with our version one was in interruption handling,
Yes.
where, as a developer, as an engineer, as a tester within an organization that's doing this, you speak to the thing with a degree of tolerance, with a degree of understanding, all of the things that are completely absent when you let the feral masses
Yes.
at it.
Exactly.
So that changes your priorities, to emphasize things like latency and interruption handling, so you can get towards what is more like a natural conversation that
Exactly.
doesn't infuriate the living bejesus out of people, like most of the solutions that are out there in
Yes,
production today.
correct.
Um, Keyword recognition IVRs and things like that. They're just ghastly, absolutely
Yeah,
ghastly.
yeah. But it's that phase where there is so much hype, and the great thing is it just crashes and burns when you put it into the customer's hands.
Yeah.
And I think that taking that learning and applying it quickly, where you own top to bottom the infrastructure, so you can remove latency, you can basically take control of ownership. You can basically take, like, in managing people's privacy, so that when they say, you know what, we've used you on the for our secretary service, but we really like the information that you've been gathering, you using in your AI. We're concerned because of one of our other providers, they spurted out a ton of crap. Could you remove it? And to be able to do that, which, I mean, it depends on the standards that you're using, but again, it's just to be able to have that control, to be responsive around delay, because that's, I mean, I'm seeing, and apologies that I'm rambling here, but demos built in the US, when they're applying it in Europe, in a European setting, because of the different delays, because it's a far more diverse infrastructure in Europe, and they're falling apart because it's built with a whole host of US assumptions that
Well,
aren't.
and also a whole load of US infrastructure. If you're
Yes,
using somebody else's GPUs and they cost a fortune to keep warm, you tend to have fairly few of them, and they tend to be in the US.
correct.
Um,
Yeah.
so you deploy a solution in Frankfurt, and you've got 100 milliseconds on top of whatever delay is in your application to
Yes.
start. That's one of the optimizations in our V2, where we took just the text to speech element of it, and we took the latency using a third party provider down from 600 milliseconds to 120.
Yeah.
That
Uh,
makes a big difference.
Massive. Absolutely.
We know from the telephony world that human perception is anything above 160 milliseconds feels a bit weird. That's a
Yes.
call to Australia from our
Yeah.
side of the world. And it's just not quite right. And then mean nothing against Australians, some of them are right, but there's just that delay
Yes.
that's a little bit weird, and yes, there's latency in other elements of the stack, and yes, it all adds up to too much as far as conversational AI. But to go from 600 milliseconds to 120 is a good start,
Exactly.
and that's just one area that we're optimizing. And
Cool.
I'd say it again because I'm not bitter about it, but we're not worth $11 billion, yet we're achieving that with a fairly small team.
Exactly.
And so the
Exactly.
opportunity is huge as we go down this journey and devote more resources to it and get more support in what we're doing, and the open source community, with help and love, as we've seen in telephony and
Oh,
and
yeah.
UCAS, creates that flywheel, that
Exactly.
flywheel effect. It doesn't
100%.
come from the overfunded monoliths. It comes
Nope.
from the community.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I think that's one of your keys to success, in being so active within all those amazing, startups. I mean, we mentioned Dave Horton before, and Jambonz. I think that's, one
They're
of
doing
the,
incredible work. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's one of those tools in the voice AI, gold rush, that you need to be basically mining with. So no, it's a great example. But this has been really fun. I'm glad we caught up. You're looking well, and look forward
Thank
to
you.
speaking
Sorry,
to
my
you
phone's
soon.
just ringing. Sorry, I just busied it. So I thought it was on busy. So apologies for that. But
No
no,
problem.
fabulous to catch up, and thank you.
No, you're
Great
welcome.
to see
See
you.
you soon.